and we will provide the recording once more on our sharing site. So welcome all. Thanks for joining us today with our packaging and sharing webinar. If you joined us last week with one of our orientation webinars, one of our kickoff meetings, we chatted a bit about some packaging strategies. And in today's session, we're just going to go a little bit deeper, especially around some demos and how you can set up these packages and ways to export and import and what that looks like. So let's get started. Again, this is a link, and I don't know if Lori or Andrea maybe can drop the link in the chat for ease. But the uft.me/VLS support site, that's going to be a site worth bookmarking, a site worth visiting throughout the next year, as we will share resources, including today's slides and the recording to this session. As always, we just wanted to send a welcome. Of course, the whole OLS, the whole Online Learning Strategies team is here. It's me, Will Heikup. Lori Harrison is in the room today, and our other colleague Andrea is here today, and she's going to be presenting on H5P. So when her portion comes up, I'll let her introduce herself more fully. We do have some CTSI colleagues, some friends of ours from the Center for Teaching Support and Innovation, and of course, as always, we welcome you, our colleagues and peers and the project teams for the VLS. You know, we're not going to do full introductions. We did that through the kickoff meetings, but you know, we want to say hi. But today's session, at the end of this workshop, you're going to be able to evaluate some common packaging and sharing options. We're going to look at H5P. We're going to look at Storyline, Pressbooks, and Quercus. We're going to, confirm some export and or publishing options for common packaging and sharing of this material. And you'll be able to identify a module or, course packing strategy for your project based on this. So to begin, we are going to look at Quercus, and some of this you might be familiar with and some not, but we are going to look at the export and import options in Quercus if you've not done this yet, what this looks like and what it will look like for other people. We'll take a quick high-level look at Pressbooks, and again, some of the export options there. Same with Storyline. And then we're actually going to go a little bit more in depth, and that's where our OLS colleague Andrea is going to take over to look at some H5P. There's a lot of interest. There's been a lot of interest and questions around what we can do and how H5P works. So we're going to go a bit more into that as a demo. So where are we? So as a quick review, at the kickoff meeting, we talked about our content structuring strategies. Now, whether you're actually here because you're developing a full course or whether you're in a modules project, we talked about there's the whole course level that might be packaged, or the module level, whether it's weekly or units, however you break that up, that will be shared with eCampus Ontario. And then again, within there's the learning object. So if it is an H5P object or a Storyline object or what have you, how can you package these things up? How can you set this up for sharing? And that's what we're really going to dive into today, what this looks like at this sort of more granular level. And again, as a recap, and again, if you missed the session, you can go back to our sharing website. But we talked about some of the common ways we might package material is build a module or course out in Quercus and export that whole piece. Export it as what's known as an IMSCC file, a common cartridge file for sharing across institutions. If you're building a module or OER or a Pressbook book, Pressbooks has several options for export, including XML file, which we're going to look at today. Storyline is another popular method if you're creating enriched sort of e-learning materials, and that can get zipped up, or the asset library. And we're not going to really look into an asset library today, as those can just be kind of individual PowerPoint files, etc., zipped in a normal compressed zip file. But we're going to look at the top three in a little bit greater detail. So I wanted to begin with the Quercus export today. So again, if you're building up a course in Quercus or module, you can export this whole Canvas course or suite of modules to be imported into any other learning management system and any other LMS. As I mentioned, they're packaged as IMSCC files, and they can be opened by programs that support the common cartridge files. Basically, your standard, your your typical learning management systems, your Blackboard, your Moodle, your Desire to Learn, of course we use Canvas, they'll all be able to ingest, they'll all be able to take these common cartridge files. And I have a little screenshot here, but I will dive into an example here, an example course structure here. This is an OLS sandbox that we have that we use for one of our projects. And this has a few modules, and because this export and import process actually takes a while, I'm only going to quickly demo that, whether you've noticed or not, on your left navigation at the bottom, typically, you'll have your settings button. And within the settings, it'll give a whole bunch of information. But on the far right, you'll see possibilities to export course content and import course content. When you use the export course content button, it's actually very simple. The export process is extraordinarily easy. You can actually choose the whole course, which is all of the content you've created, or quiz, which is, we won't get into it, but a quiz tool interoperability where just all your quiz questions can be exported if that's important. That's a separate thing. But if you do the full course, all the quizzes are there. So if you create an export, it just starts to buffer. It takes a little bit for the process to happen, but you can navigate away and stuff like that, and an email will come when it's ready to go. So that's the course export. It's very easy. Settings, in the left nav, and then export course content. So when you've created all your content, that's it. And what it'll do is it creates that zip file for you, and when you download it, it comes in that zipped IMSCC package. And if you're doing this, and we talked in one of our sessions, we talked about, well, if we're creating modules, for example, and we wanted to export module 1 as one IMSCC, as one course, set of modules, you can do that. If in this example here, in this demo thing, we have 3 modules making up this whole course. But if you created just one module, you can export that. You can export all that content, and then what you can do is you can delete it all and start building another section for your modules and export that. And you can actually have a bunch of different exports for others to bring in as they see fit. Now, the import process actually takes a bit of time, so I'll show real quick. Again, settings, import course content is on the right-hand side. Now, I've done a few different things here, but the import content, you can see we have a bunch of different options here, and as you can see, as I mentioned, there are things for Angel, for Blackboard, for Desire to Learn and Moodle. Any of these LMSs will see something similar for our Canvas content, and we can import a Canvas course package, and one can find the file in your downloads. Again, I've done this before yesterday, so here in this new window that popped up in my downloads, you can see this export, the IMSCC export here. If I choose that, and I won't because it takes a little while here, that content can come in, and you can control if you want all content to come into your course or just specific content. And actually, I'm just going to pop to the PowerPoint to show you, again, because the import actually does take some time. What does this look like? Oh, a few notes, sorry, about the export. For your own information, the backups of student interactions don't happen. So if you happen to have any, it's okay. When you export, that doesn't come in. External apps. Now, we do have an Office 365 integration with our Canvas instance. If you have something configured with that, they won't actually export in a Quarkus export. That's probably nothing to typically that shouldn't matter, but it's just something to consider. And the 50 gigabyte limit here actually, sorry, shouldn't be something you need to worry about. Most of ours are far under that. But if you have, for example, for some reason had a course quota increase and have a large course, over 50 gigabytes is not supported. But it shouldn't affect anybody. But these are some notes for the export. Sorry, I didn't cover that in a minute ago. But I did want to show you the import. So again, you can use this import tool. And what I wanted to show was is what the process I went in to do this. I had two modules, a Teacher for Learning module and Improving Teaching Practice module, but I wanted to import a whole new module. So I went to that content type. I wanted to do a Canvas course export, and then I chose the file I wanted. It took a while to, I wanted to select specific content. This is just a screenshot showing the updating. It can take a while to update and get your import, especially depending on how much content, the file size. But it's pretty neat. When you select content, and again, you could select all or certain course content. And again, these slides will be a little bigger if you download the slides. But you can select anything you want broken down. And so, for example, if I just wanted a module, and in this case, I just wanted to add one module, the collaborator module. So I selected that and just imported that. And what that gave me were the 3 modules you just saw in the demo. I only wanted that content. So yeah, so it's kind of a handy way to, if you wanted to share in an instructor guide or let other users know how to do things, you might share something like that. You can do all course content or just select certain modules or certain pieces, and that's an example. And exactly, it looks like there's a question here about if you want to do a multi-module package, exactly that. There's a few different things you can do, but you can. Yeah, that's one way you can do it. Yeah, you could delete things and export different things, or as you build it up, export each piece, like build module 1, export it, clear that out. So there's a few different ways you can do it, but essentially one could do it that way, and you would have all those materials. So that's the Quarkus export. The export is quite easy. Just go to Settings, Export, and then there's the Quarkus import, which has a few more granular options for you. A few notes with the import. Again, if you're importing this out or importing anything in from somebody else, enrollment-related data, it's not included, so that's good news. Grades, submissions, etc., are not included in content imports. You shouldn't have to worry about this, but just to get ahead of it, if you have any questions. The one thing that's interesting, though, if you did create a module, and you'll note, of course, in Quarkus you can publish and unpublish things. Those publish unpublished settings are retained in course imports. So if you had an assignment that's unpublished in a course, when you export it, it will still be unpublished on the course import. It's just something to consider if you're considering how to make things easy for sharing and or to anticipate questions from others who adapt. The easy thing would be to just have everything published, so when someone imports it, everything's just ready to go. So that's a little note on that. So that's Quarkus. That's the Quarkus import and export. So if you're building something out in Quarkus, your options are pretty easy to export. And if you're sharing with others how to import, or if you yourself have to export and import, those are the steps. I'm going to let chat messages come into the chat. Lori and or Andrea can answer. And I'm going to move on to having a quick look at Pressbooks now. So Pressbooks is an interesting tool to use, and we do encourage, and we've had several questions and others kind of see that while some people have explicitly noted to eCampus that they were going to make a Pressbook or another open educational resource, some modules projects are considering using Pressbooks for their modules projects. And Pressbooks allows a bunch of different exporting things. They include PDF, they include other e-reader possibilities and formats. And I'm into that now, and also have a look into things you can do with Pressbooks. So just to put in your head first, some export options include the Pressbooks XML, which we mentioned off the start. And what this does, when you export a whole Pressbook with that, it does create an exact copy of this entire book. So a user, or you yourself, you can actually, kind of like the Quarkus export, take the whole book as set up, or you can actually select parts, the chapters you want to import, and I'll demo that in a moment. So this is one of the top options for ease of sharing and adapting with other Pressbook users. Of course, one needs a Pressbooks account to ingest this, to take it in, but it's a great way to share a book for others to use. The EPUB function, that is a standard for ebooks. So if your students, if you're sharing this with students, for example, in your own work, or for others across the province for reading, it is for basically your e-readers. And of course, a user would need an e-reader like Nook or Kobo, and EPUB is the standard that allows that to be read. And naturally, there's PDF, so if students, if you export a textbook for reading, for students to potentially print off or users to print off, of course, I think we're mostly familiar with PDF. Basically, yeah, the problem with that is it's that people can't modify that, right? It's a flat thing that people can't edit or add to. It's great to share, to read or print off, but consider one of those other options, the XML option, to actually allow users to share. So let me just jump out and show some examples of Pressbooks and what it looks like, and this is an example I found on Sight Reading for Guitar, which I thought was a good example that sort of blends the idea of a textbook or an open textbook along with basically how you can imagine modules. So this is an open text, but it's a pretty neat example of something that kind of flows like a module or a suite of modules. So in the contents here, I've just skipped into the main body, and you can see all these different chapters. But again, you can imagine these as different modules. I've just went to Unit 6 as an example here, and to begin, they begin with you can embed YouTube, you can embed video. So there's a little piece up at the start that embeds some video, and of course then you've got an introduction. You can see, of course, you can format text, you can format the color of the text, you can add images, and here we have literal notes with your different staffs and things like that, and this is some typical setup as you might expect in a textbook then, with your formatted text and images. But then the neat thing that they've done here too is you can do these little call outs. So here's this little call out called Let's Play. Of course, you see a bit more formatting here with both with font color, and of course all your different formatting with bullets. But this one's interesting too because they've also put audio in here, so a user can play along with some score, and there's embedded audio in this as well. And yeah, little tips. It's a pretty neat example. And again, the link to this is in the PowerPoint slides. But I want to show this as an example of something that sort of blends the idea of a textbook or a suite of modules. And again, to show right away here that you can add images, you can add text, you can add video, you can add audio, make it a little bit more rich. And Andrew's going to show the even more rich H5P pieces that one can do with this. But I did want to also just look into Pressbooks. So Pressbooks, if you're familiar with WordPress, the backend or and the user interface is very similar to WordPress, a common website publisher. So here is an example of a book created by a colleague called Introduction to History and Philosophy of Science. And basically it's based. All these textbooks you can add optional front matter and back matter. There's no back matter in this book, and main body. So it is highly structured as a textbook, but as sort of showed with that sight reading example, and with this, if you look at main body, it can be basically created as a suite of modules. And I'm just going to go to organize here to show you that basically what you do is you can edit and add pieces to the body. It's a very easy workflow to add a chapter, to title things, to edit things. The interface is very user friendly, and you can see once you're within, it's got the basic what's it called, the ribbon up top, a very Microsoft Word type ribbon that allows you to make all of these things we've been talking about, all those text formats, all these different things you can do with links and formatting, with adding media and stuff like that. And then in the left navigation, this is where you see your export options. And again, we're just doing a high level here, just to give you some packaging potential. And as I mentioned, this has been set up to share online for e-readers through EPUB, for Mobi. Oh, Mobi is another e-reader for Kindle specifically. And as I mentioned, you can actually do the Pressbooks XML to show this whole book for someone to take and edit as need be. And you can also do other things like for HTML for web and stuff like that. But the Pressbooks XML is probably going to be your best friend, and other sharing options for your students or for colleagues across the province will be PDF and the EPUB and Mobi. And yeah, so it's you know, Pressbooks, it's as a member of an Ontario institution, U of T, eCampus Ontario provides access to Pressbooks. You can request an account and create one of these books. Again, I should note, if you're importing content, you can actually, you can see these little show and exports, show title and stuff like that. When you import, you see something similar, and you can select all the chapters you want. So if you're borrowing an XML, Pressbooks XML, you can borrow the units or modules or chapters you want. So it's a very simple, it's a pretty user-friendly way to import and export content and create content for sharing. So again, that's Pressbooks. A simple, we just want to send a high-level thing for you to think about, and that's Pressbooks for you. So yeah, it's something to consider. And I see it looks like Lori is taking care of things in the chat, so I'm gonna go on, and we can take some Q&A at the end of the session. But I want to just move on to the last one I'm going to talk about today is Storyline. So that's the e-authored content that sort of packages your learning materials into sort of the format you would like users to go through. You kind of control the navigation, and there's two main ways when you create a Storyline file. There are two main ways to publish it. You can publish it to share on the web. It creates just a regular zip file, and that might be useful if you don't need to track any learner's progress for you, or if you're sharing it to the province. I'm sharing with this one first because it is an option, but it's an option that's probably not something to really consider, because there's no tracking with it. And if you're going to share a published for web zip file, it does require a specialized plugin to display on a website. For example, on WordPress, you need a specialized plugin to add the content to WordPress. You can't just add a zip file from Storyline to a website if you're just a user who can edit it. You can, if you have the file transfer protocol, the FTP, the direct access to the web server access. A lot of us probably won't. But it is an option, and it might be an option if you're going to publish it to a website. If you do have FTP access, if you have someone who can put these on a website, like I'm about to share, and you can point to them. But one of the probably what you'll do is publish it for a learning management system, which creates what's called a SCORM file. That's good because you can then track learners' progress and results. For example, you can see if a learner completed a Storyline module, and you can import it into a learning management system, and that will export for others to use as well. And of course that can incorporate into your Quarkus course. So what is SCORM? I mean, you know, SCORM, just to share, it stands for, it's an acronym that stands for Shareable Content Object Reference Model. And again, it's just the unit that creates the learning object, so it can move. It's a standard to move it from one environment to another. And again, it defines the sequence of delivery. So the way you set things, the way you set the movement through your module, the triggers that have interactions, etc. That reference model packages things up nicely to be shared across. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just demo real quick a couple things here. So this is an example of a Storyline module I've already opened up that was shared in web. So the web address at on my toolbar here is something, if you publish to web and had access, you can actually do this yourself and just point to it to share. And I just wanted to run through to show, again, you can see the menu here that shows the way this has been structured, the sort of chapters and subheadings within. And this was based off of a PowerPoint. And as one navigates through this modules, again, we have embedded video to add some interactivity that one can expand. I have a link to open in a new window. I'm going to kind of go through here a bit to show some interactivity. We have a little exercise here again where a user can choose one of these example strength, values, and interests. They can, reflect on it and type their answer in this text field in the right. And, upon reflecting on what they did, they can compare to an answer that we've created. For example, so the nice thing about something like Storyline is you can create a lot of these interactive pieces, a little more enriching, engaging activities right within this published module. So as a student again works through, or a user works through, they can reflect on things in the text and stuff like that. We also have a little example here where we can print off what the student had put in. So we've created something so a user can think about, create their notes, and print or save. So Storyline's a pretty neat. So to Karen Smith's point here, the answer they type actually doesn't get stored. But what I've just demonstrated is I've created a little JavaScript that captures what people have written down, and then at the end of the module, what we've asked for is for a user to add their name. Whoops. And basically, the print PDF button here captures the date, my name, and the answers I put in. And if I printed this and it prints to PDF, I could submit this then. I could submit it as an assignment in a Quarkus course. So it's a pretty neat thing. So that's Storyline shared in web. And some of the interactivities you can do, and there's so much interactivity you can do with triggers, with branching, with all sorts of things. You can add all sorts of media. But I did want to talk about the publish items real quick. So this is an example of if you created a course or a suite of learning in Storyline, you have some options for sharing. I'm just going to move this up a bit. So the export type here, as I mentioned, the main two are web and LMS. Web, if you select web, basically all it does is offer you an export as a zip file. But I wanted to talk about if you wanted to export to put in your learning management system, to put into Quarkus, there are a bunch of different options for publishing. There are a bunch of different SCORM versions you can use. 1.2 is a perfectly good version to use that I suggest. There are different tracking options. So if there were quizzes, you can track quiz results. And so if you wanted a student or users to get a certain percentage based on quizzing, you can set that value and what that success means. Here, we only want to look at the number of slides. And so, 99% or 100 is typically good if you want someone to look at every slide. I actually like suggesting keeping that a little bit less than the total number, just in case there's some user error or something, so if you have 50 slides, if a student views 45 of them, that might be enough. And then there are reporting options. Basically, the big two are past, incomplete, complete, incomplete, and depending on what version of Storyline you use, there are a few other options. But basically, when you get this set up, and I'll share a bit more in my PowerPoint, this exports into a zip package that gets downloaded to your machine that you can then, in Quarkus, in Canvas, for example, you can add as an assignment. You can enable a SCORM tool, and you can upload that content. And basically, like most content types, you can import. These are some examples. I'm not going to do it again. It takes a bit of time to do the import process, but you can select a graded assignment is the one I suggest. And basically, it just works as an assignment. And now that this little piece here that I demonstrated earlier on web, it basically shows up like that in your Quarkus course. So basically your Quarkus course is set up like that. So that's a way to package some of your storyline possibilities. And what I just wanted to talk about was, as you do this, some advanced tips. As I mentioned, you can capture a completion status and a success status in most learning management systems. So if you do have quizzes, or you do want to track by number of slides viewed, if you want success and completion, you would choose that. I showed a bit ago a passed incomplete, and sometimes you'll get a pass failed option. That's when you want to see if a student both finished it all and was successful, aka they got your 80% threshold, for example, on number of slides viewed, or quizzing. Or you can just show the completion status, like they just did it. You don't need a grade, you just need to know they sort of just did it. You can do a completion status. So if your course does contain a quiz specifically and you're tracking the quiz score, and this is something you can use to share out to your colleagues if you share this out to the province, I would suggest when you publish this for sharing, use the passed and complete possibility, and that's gonna make sure that if anyone else brings this into their LMS and wants a quiz, the pass and complete is one of the better options for tracking. And if you're just doing like the number of slides viewed, then the best course of action is just to use the complete incomplete, because basically what that means is just so long as the students viewed, again, let's say 48 of 50 slides, if that's the threshold you set, it'll just be marked completed in the LMS. And you can set that as worth 1 point or 100 points, but basically it'll just show that it was completed. A little side note, if you want to limit the number of attempts, if you are doing something and you want a quiz to count towards a score and you want users to only have 1 or 2 attempts, you can do that in Quarkus. And again, we can do follow-ups, and we can provide more resources on the intricacies of this. This is just a high-level view, but you can do a lot of different things with your publishing options and scoring options with Storyline as well for packaging and sharing. So again, share for the web. That's where if you have a website and you just want to point users to your completed module for others to look at. But again, for sharing a little more broadly, it's nice to do the SCORM object, which you can share directly, or if you have it in your LMS, that can go out with your LMS. So H5P. So I'm going to hand this off now to Andrea. And Andrea, please say hi. And I believe you should be able to take control and share your screen, but let me know how that works.
Okay, sounds good. Hi everyone, I'm Andrea, lead of SEPSEC. I'm your virtual lab development and open education assistant with online learning strategies here at U of T. I'm also a grad student in the Master of Information program, focusing on knowledge management, information management, and knowledge media design. So it's my pleasure today to take you through some information about H5P and to give a quick demo. So on this slide here, I have some information on H5P just to get us started. It's the abbreviation for HTML5 package, and it's an open source e-learning authoring tool which enables educators to create and edit interactive content like videos, quizzes, games, presentations, and more. There are over 40 interactive content types. And once created, this interactive content can be linked to from a website, from a web resource, embedded into Quarkus, and incorporated into Pressbooks. The link that I have there, I'm going to share in the chat. That's where we're going to go next to show you how to set up your account. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. And here we go. So hopefully you can see the catalog of H5P content.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Will. Okay, so this is where you would go to take a look at what educators across Ontario have shared in this catalog of H5P content. And you can access this without even having an account, which I think is pretty cool. And to create your own account, if you don't have one yet, you would click on register on the top right corner of the menu bar there. But even before you do that, you could search here the catalog by title and description, by type of content. Here you can see a couple of examples. It's a course presentation here. There's some image sequencing. There's a drag and drop. And we're going to go through some of these, not all of these. So I'll leave it to you to explore to see what others have done. So when you do click on register, so just click on for demonstration purposes, you would fill out this form and you would click on create new account. It's that simple. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to log in. This is what you would see when you click on login. I'm just going to log in here. And you'll notice that the menu here has changed and it's added the dashboard where we are right now. And I've tagged a couple things as my favorites that I wanted to show today. I'm going to click on label the human heart. So when you are taking a look, when you're exploring the content that others have created, it can give you some ideas of what you might want to create, but you can also choose to use content you find as is and link to it or modify it to suit your own teaching needs, as long as it has a proper license for you to do so, of course. And just when it's listed, it'll show the license type. But in this case, what I've done is I can click on reuse down here if I wanted to reuse the content, and I can click on copy the content if I wanted to adapt it to my needs. So let's say I click on that, and then we can click on create. So once you click on create, it opens this user interface where you can choose to create your own content from scratch, or in this case right now for demonstration purposes, we can just click on paste and it'll paste it all in there, and you'll see, I should have done it. Let's see. There we are. Okay. So you can choose to modify these fields. And I won't show every single detail here. What I do want to point out is every content type will, once you open it up, will have a link to tutorials and a link to examples that'll show you how to modify it to suit your needs. If I go back to sorry, I wanted to go back to my dashboard and show you an adaptation of this drag and drop exercise. So what I did here was to replace the image and to replace some of the text and created a new version of this drag and drop. What else did I want to show you here? So once you have created your interactive content, and I'll show you a couple more examples, you want to then click on, if you're taking it into Quarkus, you can simply click on embed and grab that iframe code and put it into a module, and it'll show the H5P content. If you're importing it into Pressbooks, you will need to download it as an H5P file. And in Pressbooks, there's a plugin that needs to be activated in order to use this. But it's as simple as that, and then you incorporate the H5P content in here. So if we go back to dashboard, there are a couple of other really fun ways to use H5P. An interactive video. So if we go, so I've taken a video from YouTube and added some interactive components in here. So at this point
the hydrophobic effect.
I've just added some fill in the blanks right into the video. And the way you do this is, I'm going to show you, I'm going to open the editor. You see that this is an interactive video type. You could click on tutorial. You can click up on some more examples. The first step is to upload a video. And you can upload a video from YouTube. I believe you can upload a video from My Media as well. Maybe Will can add to that after I pass it back to him. And then step 2 is to add interactions to the video. And you would just go to whatever spot, you would pause it. And when you click on the actual window there that opens, there's an editor that opens up and you can change questions. But you can find all of that information in the tutorial. So the important thing to remember is that you can always click on the tutorials and click on the examples. You always want to make sure that you save work, click done, save at the top right here. So you don't lose your work. Okay. The other example I wanted to show you, just one more, is the course presentation type. In this example, it looks like a PowerPoint presentation. You create slides as you go along. When you go into the edit interface, you'll see that you can add text boxes, you can add images, and you can add interactive content. So wherever you see these little circles, there's some interactive content that has been embedded into the actual presentation as well. Okay. And again, if you wanted to import that or embed it into Quarkus, you would click on here. If you wanted to put it into Pressbooks, you would download the H5P file. Okay. You can also mark some of the content types that you've created or that you found in your searches and put it into your favorites that you can then adjust. One last thing I wanted to share with you, that there is a blog that I wrote that has all of this information in the online learning website with step-by-step instructions right there. And I can share that in the chat. And we can come back to the slides, Will. I can stop sharing. And I'll put that
Great.
link in the chat. So that's all I have. There you have it. Lots of possibilities to add interactivity into your course or module. It's up to you to kind of go in and explore and see what fits with your course, your module that you're trying to develop, and yeah, have fun with it.
Thanks so much, Andrea. Yeah, a lot of rich activities one can do. And yeah, a couple. Well, maybe I'll get to questions in a moment. Let me finish the presentation first, and we can dive in a bit more. But yes, Oh, there we go. Sorry, this was just another slide showing an example. So in this slide, that link in H5P will take you to the examples that H5P has. Many more than one can do in an hour webinar, or let alone with 15, 20 minutes, as Andrea has done. So these are some of the few content strategies and packaging things and possibilities we want to discuss today, and really. We also want to wrap up with a few more key production strategies, a few more strategies for doing this. We did note this already, but we did in the context of this webinar, for those who are just joining, want to again just reiterate to create the importance of a team space for documentation and file sharing. Again, whether it's with one of our Office 365 tools, SharePoint, OneDrive, what have you, finding that for sharing this kind of documentation is great. A little note that I think we didn't share before, of course, is of course developing a prototype of one module to confirm the scope of what that means, the cost of what it takes to do, the realities of this. So that's a little thing worth thinking about that we want to pass on with reflection of this. So if you are thinking of using Storyline, or are thinking of creating a suite of Pressbooks chapters, think about as you're doing your planning, take a moment to develop a prototype first. That can help you rescale and reconfirm or confirm just how much work this is going to take to create an example chapter, an example storyline, an example module in Quarkus. As always, it's a team project, and we know we've all here developed great teams, but just remember that. Again, we've talked about this a few times. The project coordinator is also your best friend. Having a project coordinator to keep things on track is very important, or having somebody who can at least do check-ins or have a critical path is a very important tip to consider. A little thing we just wanted to note too, and we've had a few questions about how much does this cost, etc. It's a process, there's kind of no one answer for how much it costs to do a module or a storyline object. Again, we've given some tips and strategies on how much expertise might cost per hour, but again, scale and scope of things can quickly go all over the place depending on what kind of production value you're using in a video, or how many interactions are in a piece of software, etc. So that's where we kind of suggest the prototype module being important, balancing the quality with of course the triangle of money and time, and being realistic on what you can expect. So yeah, the process of developing this is, it's got to be a balance between these things, and we can try to help give answers, but it's really tough because it can cost as much as you want it to cost. But yeah, somewhere in there, going back and looking at the video production strategies, looking at some of these things we talked about today, at least hopefully then you can get a sense how long it'll take to make, and you can get your costs. And finally, again, some more project management strategies. The asset library you create, every video you create or H5P object you create, document it, make notes, remember, what you're tracking, whether it's original files, all edited files, final files. As you come across this, you'll find new ways of managing timelines and scope, and of course, note action items as you go along. So some next steps. Well, I guess one thing I neglected to put in here, our next webinar is next week, the date escapes me at the moment. The exact date and time. I believe it's Tuesday next week at 11 a.m. till 12 p.m. Pretty sure on that, actually. Tuesday, 11 a.m. till 12 p.m. on IP and copyright. And we're going to have a couple of our librarian colleagues co-present, or basically facilitate that conversation. So looking at licensing issues, IP issues, so that'll be an important one to consider. But we also wanted to talk about, Lori and I, if you do still need some support with hiring, please reach out to us. We are able to consult on some hiring tips tips and some leads that Lori has found, if I'm not mistaken. So do reach out to us. Yeah, Lori's noting here she does have some leads. So if any of you are still missing a team member or two, do let us know. Do let us know. So this, I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you for joining us today.